the wording too, because you mentioned the word account created and they can replicate. I think you said that on the weekend. I was like, oh my gosh, the replicant. You know, like you just look at all these movies and texts and stuff, and you're like, oh, it's just like.
Well, what are they doing now with the internet?
It's all been explained.
What?
Did you see the one I shared about the sentient world simulation?
I haven't seen this one.
Can I touch on this one?
Yeah, please go ahead.
All right, so
sentient world simulation.
So if you, what they're doing now. No, well, it's not even now.
This is the time to like and subscribe if you're into this conversation.
All right. So, okay, first of all, they're creating a human brain based on all the data that we're feeding the internet. But then there's another one that was created by the Department of Defense in America through DARPA funding. So all this shit comes out of DARPA, everything, right?
What's DARPA?
DARPA is a defense research program. So it's like the research,
American, right?
Yeah, the Pentagon. So it's the technological research arm of the Pentagon. So anytime you hear like, oh, Google invented this. So like
Facebook,
it was DARPA creation. So it all comes from underground bases, then goes into DARPA, then it goes into these agencies like, you know, Google, Facebook, whatever, and then it looks like they've invented it. But anyway, so this one has gone from Department of Defense funding, DARPA, into Indiana, I think it's Purdue University, which is apparently one of the big tech ones, so they do a lot of the tech research. So they created a simulation of the Earth. I think it was around the mid-2000s, and the reason they said they were doing it was for the Afghanistan and Iraq war. So what they want to do is they create every single thing in the simulated universe is a node. So like you'll have a node, I have a node. So you got 8 billion nodes in there, which is people. Everything I do on my phone, everything I buy, my track them on Google where I go, where I shop, what I search. So it's just building, every time you're doing it, it's building data, and it's feeding into this thing called the synthetic sentient world simulation. But then not only that, this is why the smart cities, they want everything connected to the internet. So you want the water piping systems, the trucks, the cars, because they're nodes. And then they have clusters of nodes. And then they'll have like a religious grouping, which is a cluster of nodes. And then they'll have an educational grouping, whatever, groupings of these nodes. And it's constantly building. And what they were doing with the Department of Defense was, if they went to bomb somewhere in Afghanistan, then they could run the simulation through the AI. If we bomb here, what will be the political response? Because we've got a cluster of nodes here. What will be the political response? What will be the religious response? Blah, 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 blah. And they can map this. So every time they do an action, they can almost predict exactly what's going to happen. And then you see the stuff that's happening now with COVID, I shouldn't say that. But like,
Voldemort.
Like last year, you know when like the protests were like building up in Canberra, there was like this big resistance happening in Australia, and then they brought it back, right? Because you can run this through the simulation, and they'll know, okay, like if we keep pushing this harder for another month, it's going to implode, so we'll draw it back. So they run it all through So anyway, my point I'm getting to is they've basically created it, and this thing's self-replicating. It's growing. It is a simulated Earth that you're already in. You don't even know it. So what their point now is, what I'm saying is what we're living in now, this overlay is we're already in this. We're already in one of these, and they're just creating a further compression, another further removal, because because we're starting to wake up from this one, right? And what I said before with the creator, how it compresses all the way down through holograms, the synthetic does the same because it's a mimic. So the synthetic is mimicking the natural compression of the organic universe, and what we're seeing now with the creation of the synthetic sentient world simulation and the metaverse is the synthetic's doing the same thing. It's trying to trap us into another perception realm.
Does
that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
The twinning,
the digital twinning,
and then it's like makes
everything's a mimic.
The digital ID is going to interface with that. Like it's like you mirror into it.
So what do you think? Like when we die, do you think we go into this next simulation? Like, what do you think? Like, is that why they say go to the light? They try and get you to go to the light?
I personally believe that if you form to any religious dogma, particularly around worship is part of the simulation, because worship's part of the ego. You're feeding that centralized entity, because in any religion, particularly in Christianity and that, they'll say God is the creator of all. For me, that's the first lie, because there is no creator of all in the infinite. There can't be a creator of all. We're co-creating in the infinite. So a being that's saying that I'm the creator of all that is, you're feeding that. So if you're going, when you die at that last moment, especially people that are atheists and like, oh, I'm dying. What am I going to do? Oh, God, please, God, if you're real, save me, right? What are you doing? You die. Your energy at that last moment is to feed to that entity. And then you go back into, and this is what's called in the samsara, or actually the representation of the demiurge is the Ouroboros, which is a snake eating its own tail. So it just wants you looping, just stuck into its construct.
And what happens when you break the cycle? You merge with the infinite. You
break out of the synthetic,
and become back to unity, back to.
You're just back into the organic universe.
Okay.
So you're not necessarily, but there's because you don't even need a part of you that's saying, I need to get back in touch with the universal creator. You're already there because you're multidimensional. So a part of you, it's almost like you've fractalized your being. So so you don't need to ascend because you're already there.
You've broken this.
There is no time either. So the time when you came in,
it's the same time.
It's not here nor there, right? So you're out of time and space. So you're already there. It's kind of like we just threw ourselves into this maze to have a bit of fun, right?
Make some trouble, Dale.